Okay, hi everyone, I'm Janice. I'm one of the co-organizers of Filling the Gap. Beth and Lauren are also here. They're walking around, so you can say hi. Today, we're talking about pipeline disasters, but not oil. We're talking about the new oil. We're talking about data pipeline disasters. Before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territories of the Indigenous peoples of this land. This includes the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We recognize their long-standing relationships with this land, which remains home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. At Filling the Gap, our mission has always been to bridge ideas and action to spark conversations that inspire and drive real growth. Today's discussion does exactly that. We're bringing together this incredible panel of leaders who are shaping what's next in growth, marketing, and innovation. First up, I'm going to call the panelists up one at a time. Faye Pang, she is the Chief Growth Officer at FreshBooks. Woo! How about here? Okay. Faye has spent her career building brands and businesses across accounting, logistics, and technology. She brings a track record of successfully scaling businesses from the ground up through a focus on delivering an exceptional customer experience. Outside of FreshBooks, Faye is a limited partner with the Women's Equity Lab, a fund focused on supporting female founders across Canada. Welcome, Faye.
Thank you.
Next, Danitha Kanagavaratha. I did it.
Nailed it.
Woo! We'll work on that after, for my sake. She is the Director of Business Transformation at Loblaw Companies. Danitha is a senior marketing and strategy executive with over a decade of experience leading large-scale transformations across marketing, retail, and technology at Loblaw and Bell. She currently drives data and AI-led marketing transformation at Loblaw, unlocking millions in growth and efficiency. Outside of work, she co-leads a startup connecting freelancers with small businesses and competes in volleyball leagues. I didn't know that about you. That's great. Welcome. Next, Matthew Bennett. Sorry. Full name. Director and Head of Growth and Performance Marketing at Tangerine. Matt is the director, like I said, at Tangerine. He brings over 15 years of digital marketing experience in the financial services industry, excels in leading large teams to drive significant growth and efficiency through a performance mindset, value-based optimization, and MarTech innovation. Welcome, Matt. Guiding our conversation today is our brilliant moderator, Shilbee Dhalla-Kim. Welcome, Shilbee. I'll give you your mic in a second. Shilbee is a strategy consultant, a passion coach, and instructor at McMaster University with leadership experience at the Brookfield Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the Center for Social Innovation, and the Native Women's Resource Center of Toronto. She supports organizations in driving meaningful growth and innovation. Please join me in welcoming our panelists and Shilbee. All right, we're going to get excited, and I will pass this mic to Faye, and then we'll go around.
Amazing. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here in this cozy space. And we're going to talk about data pipeline disasters, horror stories, as well as successes, and we're going to learn from experts. And how we're going to do this is we're going to start with rapid fire and then go into a dialogue, an honest dialogue, a little bit of healthy debate on this topic. And then we'll open up the floor for Q&A from the audience, so have your questions ready. And so for the rapid fire segment, I'm going to ask a question that's relevant for all of you, and the sequence of order will be this way. So Matt first, and then at some point we will reverse it. I'll let you know when.
This is very nerve-wracking.
I wasn't paying attention.
I know, yeah.
Game show. Keyword here is rapid. So whatever first comes up as an answer. Is everyone ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, and then pass the mic over, right? It's hot. All right. So, first question. Which city did you grow up in?
Bell River, Ontario.
Scarborough.
Mississauga. Ooh, okay, representing different parts. Okay, what was your first job role in the industry?
like a digital strategy employee #1 at CIBC.
Loyalty retention specialist in B2B markets for Bell.
I was an associate brand manager for chocolate at Cadbury.
Okay, different starting points. Awesome, awesome. Okay. Favorite job you've had?
Okay. I know, not rapid at all. Okay, when I graduated, it was in a recession. It was really hard to get a job. So I started a website with my buddy who was hanging out in my basement while my parents went to Italy, and we started a fantasy hockey website. That was amazing for like 3 years of my life. So that. Nice. I said it really fast.
Okay, everyone gets 10 seconds then. Favorite job?
Okay, I'm going to actually say something which is really funny. I enjoyed being a cashier. So I was a cashier at Walmart and in university, and it was just a lot of fun because there was a lot of us young individuals at the cashier, and we actually were competitive with each other. So we'd be like, let's go scan quick and like look at our rates and say like, oh, did I beat you? Did I beat? And then there was competition to sell those credit cards to customers, and just going through those, like when you get the funny customer returns and the stories to tell. So honestly, it was really fun to be part of the front line and be very close to customers and being able to solve customer challenges, problems right off front. So that was probably a fun favorite job for the for something during my university time, to get really much more closer to the customer.
Same tip. I was a Starbucks barista for a summer, and I just really geeked out on like honing my craft, knowing as you were walking in what your drink order was, and surprising you with it like on the counter before you had ordered.
Amazing. Already there's growth theme here. Okay, next one. Data. Ooh, controversial question. Important or overhyped?
Critical.
Uber critical.
Ooh.
Super critical.
Oh, there's alignment here. We found an alignment. Okay. Anyone in the audience who says overhyped, we'll come to you for Q&A. Decision making, data first or intuition first?
A balance, just like John Schneider.
I'd say very similar. It's very dependent on the objective and the problem at hand and how quick you have to make it. But generally, I'd say data first if I could.
Yeah, proportional to the decision making. Is it a one-way or two-way door, and how big is the business impact? But generally, data first.
Okay, more alignment. Next one. What's more important, data cleanliness or data automation?
Automation. Definitely in marketing, automation.
I'm going to have to defer. I say data cleanliness, so critical.
Yeah, I don't think you can have great automation without a strong data cleanliness base.
Okay, we have our first misalignment. Woo! Next one. What's one brand using data right?
Why'd you go to me first? One brand using data right. Okay, yeah, I'll say I really like our setup at Tangerine, but I'll use another bank. I do know the CIBC's infrastructure, and I think they're excelling at AI right now. You just look at press releases, look at what they're doing in their annual statements. They're clearly leading the way across the big five banks in AI, and I think that's founded with some pretty rich data investment from like yesteryear. So I'll say another bank that I'm not invested in. Well,
Okay. On my end, I would say Sephora. I think I really love the infra and the ecosystem, how they play data integral and like connect from their loyalty base and just create this really great system. So for me, I'm a huge geek on Sephora and like how they've leveraged data and their tech and infra.
It's a great example. It feels like I'm a Starbucks shill. I'm not, but I actually think they're doing a great job with data, both internal and external, to drive customer value. So surfacing like a push notification or a recommendation based on the weather outside, based on your prior history, other data that they have on you. And I think it's just allowed them to personalize that experience really nicely.
Thank you. Okay, to make this challenging, we're going to start with you, Faye, first, reverse the order, and now one word answer. One to couple of words. What's one industry that's struggling with their data readiness?
Oil and gas.
I'm going to say small businesses.
kind of same answer that I had last was banking. Still struggling. Doing well, but struggling. Yeah.
Okay. And which area in your company do you wish data played a bigger role? Faye first. Couple of words.
This is going to sound funny, but our internal decision making.
I agree with that too. I'm actually going to say in-store experience. There's a huge opportunity there in terms of, what's communicated to the customer and whether that's too much, too little, and being able to make more data-driven decisions on those in our retail storefront.
We're using a 27-year-old CRM in our contact centers that is connected to nothing. So absolutely customer support and frontline.
Ooh, see the kind of honesty we're gonna get today? Thank you, everyone. Next one. Have you ever seen firsthand the impact of poor data pipelines? And this one is a yes or no question.
Yes.
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 We have a winner. We have all experience on this panel. Yeah. Poor data pipelines. And so we're going to get to know more of these stories, hopefully, horror stories. And so for this next segment, I'm going to ask 4 questions, which is addressed to all 4 of you, but this is not, there's no order. Whoever wants to go next can share, build on each other, challenge each other for different perspectives, because that's how we'll learn. And I ask that you're mindful of how much space you're taking up, because we have limited time. I want to make sure we hear from all of you. Okay, so the first one is, for all of you, in your company, how would you rate the level of data literacy across the company? And does that data literacy include an understanding of data ethics and responsible use? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first. I think we've actually talked about this a lot as a leadership team, and at the moment we think it's like low to mid. There's a big opportunity for increased data literacy. We've actually spun up a program to improve that, working with folks to actually help train our team to be more data literate and to tackle problems with a really data-first approach. So you'd think as a tech company we'd be high on the scale, but we actually think we've got a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I think Loblaw is a very large, complex matrix organization. And so what I would say is there's certain groups that are very high data literate, and then there's certain groups that are growing into that low to moderate. And I'd say the department that I'm in marketing and private label, I think we are in that cusp of like just moving from low to moderate. And I'd say as an organization from data literacy, there's like multiple components to it, right? There's the data wrangling and like data validation component and having a central hub. And I think that's where I really enjoy the company that I'm currently in, where they have a very centralized approach on core enterprise data. And then I think it's all about interpretation, which ends up becoming an interesting factor where I think the low to moderate kind of goes in peaks and valleys. And so that's kind of my answer. It's like, I'd say in certain groups, I'd say very high. In certain groups, it's a bit low. And so if I were to balance it out, it's a bit like in the low to moderate space of data literacy.
Yeah, and in banking, the regulatory and compliance tends to kind of precede kind of your democratization of your data. And so I feel really good about kind of how we're set up in terms of compliance and ethical guidelines of data use and how that's been cascaded and educated across the organization. For us, it's been, as we're going through this transformation towards like cloud marketing platforms, and we're democratizing that data and we're making it more available for everyone, we're finding how difficult it is to train like bankers, I'll just say bankers, that train bankers on using digital data for their making decisions, like understanding behavior of the website and what that means for how they should be designing products, and just trying to make those connections. So a big part of our current transformation is bringing a lot of those teams along the journey with us and just educating them along the way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so low to medium, but also there's a range in terms of literacy, and also because across teams, and also because of your different industries, there's more compliance and regulation in some, and also training that comes in to support, but also challenges with training with this topic. Okay. In your company, which teams or areas do you see a lot of success around using data? Automating data pipelines and making sure that data is actually used?
I can start. We've been on this transformation to essentially connect our full funnel and get visibility all the way through Not even to, originally it was on like your last digital flag, and I think a lot of companies still operate like this. Now we're getting a lot richer with cross-sell data, deposit data, like tenure, primacy, all these kind of really important metrics for us in defining just kind of the revenue potential of clients. And so as we're kind of educating on, wait, what was the question?
Which teams or areas do you see a lot of
Right.
success?
Sorry.
Success.
As we're going through this and educating this, we're seeing a lot of proficiency on the paid media side in
Yeah.
our customer acquisition, and just we're getting far more accurate and proficient in our targeting and just in our conversations with a lot of our platform partners about who we want to go after and how we want to optimize our kind of very scarce media budgets towards that revenue.
I can add to that. I think where I see data being leveraged very heavily is in digital teams, specifically because they have a more connected, easier way to understand that customer journey. So our digital teams, I'd say, really strong in data-driven decisions and being able to connect the dots. The other place where I see it really well equipped in a retail grocery space is loyalty promotions, because that is the core front of like converting the customer in that grocery. So they are very in tuned with like test and control, incrementality, and just always constantly optimizing and just really showcasing that on the upfront. And then similar to what Matt was saying, like we've been on a journey in marketing specifically, and I'd say where we're really pushing is paid media and really being more integral, and thoughtful in terms of how we are looking at efficiency with how our paid media or even media in general is bought so that it contributes more to the business and being able to offset headwinds. And so a lot more data driven decision, more related to sales, and talking back to the business on letting them understand, hey, don't cut my dollars because my dollars is actually helping you from a headwind perspective. Let's shift potentially some dollars from print or flyer sometimes, that's a controversial topic in grocery, but and then using that investment within digital and paid media to really drive that reach and traffic that we're looking for to support sales overall. So that's kind of my answer in a whole front.
Probably unsurprising because you've got 3 marketing and marketing ops leaders up here, but I would echo what's been said, which is we've made really good headway as it relates to our paid media spend. So just a bit of history, we used to optimize for things like leads and trials, sort of that very, very top of funnel. And what we've started to do increasingly is feed into these models, what's the predicted lifetime value of this customer, using all the signals that we might have around, their intent, how they're using the product in that trial stage, et cetera, and starting to work with our partners at Google and Meta to optimize our ad spend to actually try and drive higher predicted lifetime value. So going deeper into that funnel and pooling our data that we have to improve the model. So I think that is an area we've really innovated over the last few years, and we're seeing positive results.
Okay, so paid media. Okay, so then we talked about the successes, but what about the horror stories? Any horror stories of when data has been misused? How did your organization respond or learn from it?
I'll start.
Brave.
I wouldn't say like publicly no challenges there. This was more of something that when I first joined the organization, the team decided to build their own marketing mix modeling platform. And my job was, hey, you need to advertise it to get people to start using it. And that was like my second day on the job. And I'm like, sure. I went in our town hall and I was like, hey, marketers, use this tool. And I got backlash. I'm like, oh, it's not right. I don't believe it, blah, blah, blah. And then what really became that horror story, and one of the things that I would take back is really understanding whether the data cleanliness and accuracy was there. And what ended up happening was 30% of the media spend data was only being able to be tracked. The 70% wasn't, which was like really useless if you're really trying to optimize your media budgets. And so what it came down to is, okay, we really got to break down that foundation and understand how we move that 30% to like 100% or 99% accuracy in terms of like what we're buying to what we're seeing from the data pipeline perspective. And so that was a very huge learning exercise, which you kind of have to backtrack because I pitched something and now I lost credibility. And so it was really backtracking that storyline to come back and be open and transparent that, hey, we're going to have to revisit this, or we're going to have to start from scratch. We're going to need some investment dollars, and why we need to make those investment dollars, and why we have to change the whole way that we positioned and of like a marketing mix modeling and actually go external to a vendor to support that need was a big endeavor, but it was the right decision. But at the time, it was quite disastrous to deal with the PR that I had, or that had to be done for that organization, and just building more trust with myself and my team. And that took over time, but being transparent, I'd say, was the big piece of it that led to now the team starting to use it, leverage it, and us really seeing really great progress in how we're seeing sales contribute from how we're spending our dollars.
Wow. How long did it take you to build the new?
So grocery is always like, being at Loblaw and grocery, they expect you to show some value in like less than a year. So I needed like a little bit of immediate help and, doing a little bit of socialization. So it took us about, I'm going to say 3 to 4 months, really focused, and a huge investment on the data engineering side of things to really like clean the data and like really like I was nights with the data engineering group saying like, okay, how are we moving the needle? Are we creating gold standards in our data tables? Like I had to become really data illiterate on this front. So it was a lot of long nights. I know the media team probably hated me as well on how much I pulled them in, but it was the right work that needed to get done in order to get that credibility when we went back to the divisions, when we went back to the CFO, really to showcase its value. So 3 to 4 months of real clean data foundation, but it was like 3 to 4 months of dedicated, like a squad team, really focused on that. If we didn't have a squad team, it probably would have taken much longer than that. And I think that's the piece where I really had to convince the business that this was so integral to get done. And it was hard to be able to show return on investment at the time when you're doing data cleanliness. And so it had to be more focused on, well, the output is going to drive revenue and growth. And that's where the team built trust. And, we're in a really great place. And it was great to just kind of jump over that hurdle that we were dealing with. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can give kind of two answers. I've seen you get the consultant, you're working on a big enterprise project, and then the consultants come back to you and they're like, actually, it's going to be 2 million more than we anticipated because, this happens. Because, whatever, we built the wrong thing, or it's not connected to the right thing, or this other enterprise team is doing something else, and it's totally changed our data requirements. And that just kind of happens at the enterprise. But how I've tried to work through that is just learn as much as you can and make as many connections with those other teams as you can. So you're trying to anticipate a lot of those requirements. Plus you get more people on board, and then it's less of a surprise to the rest of the organization. But I feel like those just kind of happen. More so in the day-to-day, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities, less so disasters, more opportunities that your team can learn from. Especially like we're going to make mistakes all the time. You just hope you have the checks and balances along the way to make sure you're not marketing to kids, or your list is going to the completely wrong audience or something like that. And so we have a lot of sharing and demoing in our process, and it's demoing kind of within the internal team. So our data team will kind of share, here's what I'm working on, here's the list. They'll have kind of like a partner programming or whatever, co-developing stage in that process, but also just more demoing, here's the campaign that's going live. And even if it's like a repeat campaign and something we've done a million times, we always still share it just to make sure we're getting eyeballs on it. And just catch, if something looks off, or we're using new technology for the first time, just getting those kind of second set of eyes.
I'll go back into my archives. So I used to work at Uber back in 2015 to 2020, and one of the biggest nightmares we had was we didn't realize that there was something fundamentally broken in some of our data pipelines and getting unsubscribes and suppressions back into our system. And so at one point, we were basically flagged as spam. So all of our emails were going into spam, basically shut down from Google because we were just not getting the feedback. And so that was like a red alert. How do we fix this? What needs to be done? But it was a real eye opener for everybody to say, like, we have to make sure, the setup is correct and we've got the right data pipelines feeding into, our CRM system. Otherwise, we don't have email as a channel available to us.
How did you resolve that?
It took a while for us to do, and some outreach to certain folks, but it was basically like getting our act together, cleaning things up, and completely resetting our processes.
Okay, so we've got spam, red alerts, we have data inaccuracies as a high percentage. We also have, I appreciate that there's lots of mistakes, and also what are the checks and balances that's needed, but also how do you build trust? And also losing credibility and then gaining that credibility back, that is impressive. And then also thank you for sharing how you responded to that, and making sure that the setup is properly done. So we have some of these horror stories, and the next question we have for you is, how important is data and AI to your company and to your role? As companies move faster on automation and data-driven growth, as you have all talked about in different ways, how do you make sure that compliance and ethical standards are built into your data pipelines from the very beginning, so that they don't become the next disaster story that you might be sharing with us on your next panel?
I'll go first. So just a bit of context, at FreshBooks, we support small business owners, and we basically serve as their operating system. So, they're connecting their bank account to our system, they're sending invoices, they're managing their customers through it, reconciling their financials, et cetera. So we have financial information which we take very seriously. It's also very powerful when you think about our ability to provide access to capital to these customers and know when they've added another employee and when they might need payroll. So all of that to say, data is at the core of what we think is going to drive the value that we can deliver back to the customers and the partners in our ecosystem. So it's critically important. And then the way that we've tried to set that up is we do have data governance and training that we offer everybody. We have a use council that reviews use cases and make sure that we're thinking about it from all the various angles, just to make sure that we're really being good stewards of that data, despite new programs, new partners, new things we might spin up, that we're always thinking about how we steward that properly.
I think in every industry, probably there's like a FOMO really about AI. Like everyone wants AI, and it became this nice shiny object. And it was like, everyone do AI, and then, and do it. But like everyone didn't really know what that really meant and means. And as, we've become a bit more, not even just an organization, but as an industry and even everyone across corporations, you become more of understanding that data and AI are connected, right? If you don't have the right foundation, your AI is useless. And it's actually based off of that data foundation. And so it is a huge interest and investment, not only in our marketing organization, but as Loblaw as a whole. And our digital teams are doing some great stuff in the AI space. And I'd say that the privacy ethics is also integral. And so what I meant by when we went through our disaster and building that governance, that validation, that foundation, it actually just really helped to then now understand how does then AI act as an activation layer on top. And then you add in the human aspect of feedback loop, right? And just ensuring that that quality of that data is really great in terms of how you then interpret that data leveraging AI. And so that's kind of my response to it. It is number one focus. And I think AI just helps to scale. So a lot of the times, giving access to data is a big piece, like accessibility, democratization. But the way that people want to interpret data is always going to be different day to day to day. The number of requests I get on data is ridiculous. Like I probably have 200 requests in my team's backlog, and you have a finite number of resources, a finite number of budget. And now you're like, okay, which do I prioritize? Because I know my CMO wants 10 of these questions, and she's going to probably ask another 10 questions in 2 weeks, and my team is too IT release dependent. And so if I make changes to my dashboard, it takes too long. And so can AI help? And that's actually the questions that we're actually exploring and looking into to really help remove that capacity constraint related to technology by leveraging AI. So that's my kind of response to it. I think it's so integral, and I would use it more from an efficiency, scalability perspective to really help free up some of that, repetitive cycles that are required from a data perspective.
And so being in banking, I kind of touched on this earlier. A lot of the regulatory and compliance kind of dictates everything you do, and I think it's my job as the team's leader to make sure that the first step we do is always the hardest step in terms of access to data or automation or AI or whatever. And so what I mean by that is usually there's a lot of hurdles I have to go through, from technology procurement or all of the kind of compliance and around ensuring we can work with that vendor and we're not going to misuse the platform or the data or the intent of what we're onboarding it for. But a big part of that process is working with those teams to define the sandbox, or kind of like the boundary of how we want to work, and making sure that any use case we want to use our data lake for, or our kind of new paid media platform or whatever for, we're not tied down by more compliance approvals and things like that. And so for us, it's been trying to kind of define, in marketing anyways, what's our kind of marketing data lake, how are we going to use that data, and then any use case within this, and kind of showing the architecture of where our data sits, how it flows through some of our audience and data platforms, and then ultimately what the destination is. Anything kind of within that space, we should have kind of free reign on and just go. And that's because you've already approved us having access to the data, you've already approved us having access to these data platforms, and you've already approved us using these marketing platforms. I shouldn't have to ask you if I want to connect a credit card audience into Google. That should just be part of the nature of how we're doing it. I have heard horror stories of other organizations that have to ask for approval every single time, and I can only imagine what that would be. We take that a step further now that we've kind of established that, and when it comes to AI, I'd say AI at Scotia as a whole has had a slower, there's a lot of really interesting pilots, but definitely slower adoption overall across the employee base. And so what we've been trying to do is say, okay, where is AI enabled in each platform? And this is why I answered automation over cleanliness, by the way. It's because in that platform, if I can turn on an agentic, so Gemini is a really good example. We have our data lake sits on GCP. Gemini's already in there, and all I want to use it for is essentially natural language querying, instead of having some smart data science person doing a lot of the querying and the complex. I can just set it up so that I can, in an agentic way, pull how many credit card customers we have in Saskatchewan. So just trying to turn that on and making it, basically the hardest part is getting the approval to turn on Gemini, but in the context of our existing data use and our existing intent for the platform is a lot easier for us to start to take advantage of it, build up really solid wins in the AI space, and then turn that into, I don't know, some really kind of complex customer-facing Gen AI model. It's a bit of a stretch to get there, but at least you're knocking off a few wins along the way in order to try to achieve that.
Just to elaborate on that, can you give an example of maybe how you went through that and what output you saw leveraging Gemini and GCP?
We are in the process of getting Gemini approved, but basically I have one marketing data guy on my team. His name's Robin. He's fantastic. Robin is only one person, and Robin also just went on pad leave. And so the perfect example for me and the organization was like, wow, we really, really miss Robin and what he was able to do. So I was like, could I clone Robin? That's literally the name of the project, Clone Robin. Could I clone Robin in Gemini and basically say, instead of having him go in and build, a bunch of Looker dashboards for us and just kind of deal with ad hoc requests, can we go in and just tackle all those really simple things that Gemini can do? And so that's been our main, and we're moving slowly through the process. There's other use cases for Gemini in the organization, for us in marketing data. Our chief AI officer said, do whatever you want in marketing. You're not gonna hurt anybody with the data that you have available. So I'm paraphrasing him a little bit, but basically we got the green light. Giving me a green light is, so anyways, that's essentially kind of the use case. We're going through it right now, but we've been testing it in Sandbox. It's gonna work, so.
Awesome.
Thank you. So we're hearing some common themes here: boundaries and setting foundations, and then that human touch of also feedback loops and review, and making sure that there's also data governance. I want to now ask specific speakers to do a bit more of a deep dive. And I'm also aware we have about 15 minutes left. Faye, you come from a tech background at Uber and now the Chief Growth Officer of FreshBooks. Tell us a story of when poor data readiness and pipeline issues caused a large impact across the organization.
Yeah, I'll take us back almost 10 years. So Uber Eats launched here in Toronto actually as a global first in 2015. And when we launched, the thesis was this is going to be a platform for us to be able to deliver white tablecloth restaurants like Buka and Ruth's Chris Steakhouse to customers across the city. And it turns out the number one search on day one was McDonald's. Right? People just wanted their Big Mac and fries. And so very quickly, we ended up having to go sign big companies like McDonald's and Starbucks far ahead of when we were ready and far ahead of when we were, we had the data and the instrumentation that they would need to be successful. So very quickly, we started to run into roadblocks around McDonald's HQ, great partners really pushed us to be better, saying, we want to know like this level of detail of when the courier arrived and how long they waited so that we can optimize the operations sort of at a restaurant level. We're like, that sounds like great data to have. We need to go figure out how we like instrument that and make sure that we surface that and make sure that it is manipulable in a way that you can actually do multi-location roll-ups, because you have owners and operators that have multi-location operations and they want to see what that average is across their restaurants. So it became like quite a all hands on deck situation to say we've signed these customers. We don't necessarily have our data in a spot that is actionable and operationable for what they want. We've got to go fix that and then think about how we build that into dashboards and make it accessible to them so that we can, work together as partners to make this thing hum. So, a great example of when we conceive the app, not necessarily thinking of this specific use case, but kind of going back to like setting the use case, knowing what you're trying to solve and thinking about how you set that data foundation from the beginning. What is their specific next question?
Yes. Okay, next question. Danitha, you took Loblaw's marketing through a whole transformation process around data cleaning, data connecting, and the realization of the value. Can you tell us what that transformation process was like?
Yeah, and earlier on I kind of alluded to that project that I had to kind of advertise and then had to retrofit and like fix and deal with the PR with the team and the team. There's a lot of backlash on that, which was fun. And so what it really alluded to was honestly going through an exercise and leveraging resources to understand why that platform wasn't great. And that's where we identified the 30%. And so the goal became, how do we get to the place of, okay, I want to be able to have a marketing mix modeling platform for the marketing organization to truly be able to say, what was marketing's value to the business from a same metric perspective, which is sales contribution. And so that was the goal. And then it was about building the blocks to get there. And within building the blocks, there's three things I always think about. There's the technology element, there's the people element, and then there's the process element. And so what we focused a lot of time on was those three things. One was from a technology perspective, what do we need to do? So the great thing, again, Loblaw, really great central hub where you can leverage a lot of the existing technology like GCP, like data engineering resources to really build that together and leverage resources that understand good data literacy, like data governance teams, data privacy teams, et cetera. And so it was about like determining, okay, what do we need to do and who do we need to get that enabled? And then it was about the people and like, do we have the right resources to support us to get to that endeavor, not in a year, but in like 3 to 4 months. And if we didn't, okay, where do we go to get those type of resources? And then, okay, it became, okay, now I actually have a number that I actually need investment in. And how do I get buy-in? So the other element to this is like, who's sponsoring you? And it can't just be, of course, your CMO is going to sponsor you because this is so important to her. However, you also need the rest of the business and you need an advocate on the rest of the business to be able to get those dollars. And so interestingly enough, our CFO at the time was very invested in the media aspect of our business. And so it became an opportunity for me where I was in a forum and I was like, hey, I'm going to convince the CFO why he needs to invest in marketing dollars. And so using existing forms where I became visible to him, I then actually had a note to him saying, hey, would love to have a coffee chat with you and talk to you about all the things that we want to do in marketing. And so through that connection, kind of got him to believe in this idea. It's not an idea, it is true fact that marketing is actually less of an art and more of a science. And you can actually use data really, and it should be stemmed from data first. And really, actually, the way to talk to him, because of course he didn't really understand marketing. The rest of the organization looked at marketing as a flyer engine. Hey, you're just really helping to create the grocery flyer, you're doing in-store signage, your print. You don't know much about like sales and what marketing truly attributes to that. And so what it was really about was interpreting the conversation in a level that he would understand. And so it was about, hey, if you look at the dollar that you need to spend in loyalty promo in the store, in a store investment, and you look at a dollar investment for marketing, what you want to be able to understand is that value and that return on investment. And I'm telling you that this investing in data foundation will help us understand that better versus like putting our fingers up and thinking, yeah, I need to cut in TV or I need to cut in radio, and just really being able to use data to be able to make those strong decisions so that there's no impact to the overall business. And so that interaction got him to believe in what we were trying to endeavor, which was an idea, and got us the investment that was required without a business case. I'm saying, it was pretty big. We normally have to do a business case, and our CTO would probably say, hey, why did you do this and otherwise? But we did it anyways using connections. And that helped to then do the investment that was required from a data foundation. And then from there, it was just all about that next layer of activating and then getting the right platforms to be able to get the right statistical models to then interpret the data accurately. And so that was kind of like the building blocks of, I'd say, going through building a roadmap, building a vision, and really connecting it back to the vision of the marketing organization. It's not about the data vision, it's about the total vision. And data was the plumbing point of like a really smart house that we're trying to build, which is scaling personalization. And so this becomes the first piece. The next piece is like automating on operations, which will be another chat if Janice invites me on. And then activation, and like how do you add your channels in there to then leverage data so that you're a little bit more smarter on targeted abilities. And so that was kind of our journey, and the big piece was on data foundation and making, I think, that conversation with the CFO, getting the right buy-in across the departments. We actually also, as we were going through the exercise of validating our data, we had strong analytic business partners across the division supporting that goal as well. So that drove also credibility in the data and the measurement that we were building. Because the worst thing you want is you say, hey, I'm driving $37 return on ad spend, and they're like, get out of here. We do $1 to $2 ROAS on a weekly basis. I don't believe you. And so you want to keep the methodology the same too, so that you're kind of speaking apples to apples versus apples to bananas. And they're like, I don't believe you're bananas. And so yeah, that's been the journey. Really bringing in the right people was probably the biggest factor, I'd say, other than the three things that you definitely need to do in order to see that progress grow. And I think that's where we've seen a huge success in really being able to prove marketing's value to the business.
Thank you. Matt, Tangerine is a scrappy bank with a digital-first approach. Do you have data gaps and issues today? And what are you doing to solve those problems? But also, how are you working across the org, which is coming up as a theme, right? How do you convince the executives and teams to get behind the work?
Yeah, it's interesting in an enterprise, and I've fortunately been able to work through two situations. One where the CMO is like, I need you to come in and rebuild everything. It's all terrible and old, and I know where marketing is going. Help me build this. And then the other side, which is like, no, marketing is creative and brand, and that will drive us forward. And whatever we're doing on the platform side, let's not invest heavily in it. And so what I find is when you don't necessarily have the organizational support, you have to do you have to build your own kind of wins and then sell that up to the organization. Be like, look at because without doing it, everyone thinks your Google acquisition is less valuable. than a face-to-face or an organic interaction that they're not necessarily paying the same dollars for. But then using the data, you prove, actually, no, it's 3 times more valuable, and I have every data point and even more insight into this customer, and I can prove they're going to bank with us longer. So you definitely use data to help tell your story. I found it also helps to just bring them along to like events. Like Adobe is perfect for this, where you can have Adobe do their like kind of hype reel about where all their marketing stack is going and how everything's going to be automated and agentic. And just with like 2 lines of text, you can have a full funnel marketing campaign kind of spit out to all your, and it's like, look, see what we can do, and you can save all this money on, capital and all that stuff. And so that really helps sell it too. And it's like, we're already building so much of this. So I'd say that definitely helps sell it through the organization. But in terms of actually building it and making kind of all those data connections we're talking about, I'd say at Tangerine, I called it earlier, our biggest gap is definitely with equipping our frontline teams with next best action, honestly, just like sales data, and even just getting offers and servicing offers to our frontline team is really difficult. And one of our top customer interactions is just kind of questions about, can I get a better rate? Can I get a better offer? Or I'm seeing this competitive offer, can you match it? And often we're not able to respond in quick enough time. And so the easiest answer is just to gut that whole 27-year-old platform and completely launch a brand new one, which we had a press release the other day announcing that. But it also involves a lot of pilot work that we're doing right now to connect our Adobe CDP into that space in the old world, because it's going to take some time. They're going to get value in the old platform if we can find a way to do it, as well as obviously in the new platform, which just a couple API connections, it becomes a lot easier. And so it's not a hard sell for that team, because they obviously would value just having more data, and they know that they're not leaving calls or leaving the client as satisfied as they could if they had more context to the call and just more, and they were equipped with more capability to solve their problem.
Thank you. Clearly, there's a lot of wisdom here. So this is now your opportunity to ask any questions where you want to go deeper. And maybe one of you can hold the mic. Janice, would you be able to ask folks? Yeah. Any questions from the audience? Here. Oh, wait, you can use that to answer.
Hi, I'm AJ Lam. I guess the consumer doesn't know much about this data pipeline that the organizations are doing. Is there education for the consumers?
So I'll answer that a couple ways. I think there's a lot organizations can do about being upfront about how they're using their data. And an idea I've always had but never executed, but maybe I should because I'm saying it publicly, is telling you, the client, why you're eligible for the offer that I'm presenting you with, right? And so if it's a pre-approved credit card offer, just a little thing at the bottom says, why are you eligible for this offer? It's because you have great credit, you've been with us for a long time, and you don't have this credit card. And then it's like, oh, okay, they're not using my data in an inappropriate way. I'm okay with the use of this. I don't want this offer, but good to know that they're using it, ethically or thoughtfully. What we do, so I'd love to get there, but what we do is we're part of the DAC, the Digital Advertising Alliance of Canada, and so that's kind of more allowing customers to opt in and out of, I'm sure both of you guys are members too, allow customers to opt in and out of interest-based advertising. You can do it by platform, you can do it by kind of topic or category or interest, and so instead of kind of the opt-in method and hope that they kind of seek us out and they're like, I'd love to get Tangerine ads, it's more just kind of allowing them to set the preferences and decide how they want their data to be used and to be opted out completely if they want to. And then there's also the Law 25 capabilities that we've inherited as an organization to allow the right to be forgotten and just kind of cascade some of that Quebec legislation across across every use case we have. I don't know if you guys want to add to that.
No, I think
It's a great answer.
Yeah, you got the right answer. Another hand.
I just have a follow-up question. I think you touched on it shortly, but I think the data is pretty clear that customers tend to make decisions based on emotions, and their feelings really matter. And we've also seen sort of from the data that customers are less likely to provide information freely than they ever have been before. How are you looking to overcome that challenge? Because behavioral data, while it's really great, it doesn't tap into exactly the emotional triggers that are causing customers to act or not act.
Capture the moment, right? I think I'll just share a couple things. I'm sure you guys want to add something. So I was pleasantly surprised when we started adding opt-out dialogues to a lot of our journeys. The rate at which clients would opt in, or even visitors to our site would opt in. We're at a 93+% opt-in rate, which I think based on the industry, that's pretty good, but I think that's probably higher than you would expect if you're not looking at that data all the time. And so let's say that's like a 10% maybe data loss in what I'm able to measure through acquisition. And then everything else, we're just stitching together with, some of the, if you work with like the Facebooks, the Metas, the Googles, the Amazons, a lot of, you're seeing a lot more of a push towards an API-based analytic platform. And all that's doing is stitching your data with basically your login profile. And anonymously, but allowing better insight into the interactions with that customer as well as across their platform. So you're seeing more of the stitching on the kind of and the lean more towards that first party data versus relying on third party and relying on cookies and that whole thing. But I will also say as an organization, we're putting more emphasis on second party data. And so I want the customer to tell me what they're interested in. If they want to see rate offers, I want them to opt into that and just tell me that they're just here for rate offers. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll give you rate offers all day. But I also want to know why an offer wasn't relevant to them. And maybe there's something off in our models that are suggesting they're for that, or they're just not down for a long-term relationship with Tangerine. And even that's useful. And we can use that to build different campaigns.
Maybe I'll add, and then I'll pass it over to you. So sentiment is huge. I agree. Like especially during post-COVID, inflation, some of the recession challenges, like it's at a high peak. And specifically for Loblaw, like transparently, we're all over the news. We were like number one person to be blamed when it came to grocery prices. But there's a lot of background, right? Like we, even as employees, got educated a lot by our senior leadership of what is all the work that we're doing to ensure that our customers are content and happy. Understanding that supplier model, tariffs coming in. And so one of the investments that I think a lot of organizations are doing now is on social sentiment and social monitoring and really understanding what are customers saying on their platforms about your company and how are they feeling and how are we responding to that, so to really improve reputation and improve that relationship with our customers. And so there's a heavy investment actually in our organization, really focus on social sentiment. One of the KPIs that our organization focuses their STIP on is OSAT, which is all about customer satisfaction and if they're happy with our stores. And if our OSAT is low, we're not getting paid as employees. And so that's become a huge heightened. And so what organizations are really doing and what we're doing is really understanding what customers are saying in real time, being able to understand that sentiment and then respond back in a way that's helpful. So we've heard a lot related to value programming. So you'll see a lot of like hit of the month. Like our CEO has brought in a lot of really great programs that drive value. More no-frills store fronts coming into like even in the downtown front. And that is really just in response to a lot of the sentiment that we're hearing from a customer perspective. And then where it gets into even interesting space where we're looking into investments is like we have platforms and tools that really allow us to, pull the information, but there's a lot of work that's really being done because imagine like Reddit or like Twitter and you're on Meta, you're on Instagram, like everywhere, right? There and even on your own store Google reviews. Like how do you take all that information as a company that may only have like 10 people really focused in this space and be able to really understand, okay, what do I prioritize and how do I interpret all this data? And so there's a huge investment going on in social care that I'd say as well. So like having more faster responses so that customers feel heard and listened to. And so that's kind of my response to that is that it's not just about the business aspect of it, like, hey, how much dollars am I going to drive, how much productivity? It's also really integral about how the customer feels with our stores, with how we represent our banners. And so taking in that social sentiment of customers and then applying that into kind of our value propositions and our next priorities has been a big piece as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll just top up. I think so much of the distrust is around like, what's the value exchange that I get? If I give you my data, like, what's the value that I get back? And so we think about that a lot, which is how do we make sure we're using that, responsibly, but also to surface relevant offers to give you value back that actually feels like a worthy exchange. And so that comes down to things like contact strategy. What are we surfacing to you? If you're, a specific type of business, if we give you a dramatically irrelevant offer, automatically, your trust has come down, right? So using that to say, hey, the more data you share with us, the more we're going to be able to give you access to capital or lower rates or things of that nature, and really trying to push ourselves to drive value for the customer, I think is one of the key things to keep that value exchange strong and have them feeling, high levels of trust.
Awesome. Any more questions? Okay, one more?
Yeah.
Yeah, last one. She hesitated. No pressure.
I guess my question is, what sort of characteristic that consumers can look out for companies that we can trust with our data? Because I feel like it can also differ on companies and I think I'll repeat my question. What characteristic that consumers can look out for a different company to trust them with their data? Because it can also differ with leadership. I personally work at Mount Sinai Hospital, and my manager has been a nurse for the last 40 years, and the way she advocates for patients and her staff members is just uncanny. So for me, it's I've seen other leaderships, and it's not like they don't care, but they have a different way of thinking of how to advocate for their patient and how to advocate for their staff. But the way my manager is trusted within the hospital, within the whole every department, is I can trust her with my data. And so if we trust Loblaws and maybe leadership changes, or maybe you leave and other people, how would they look at the company to trust them with their data? Because it can be confusing, the company, the faces, the leadership, and everything, it kind of has to be aligned. So how would you let us know, or the consumer, how would they trust you?
Let me rephrase the question. I think you're trying to say, when an organization's leadership changes and their sentiment towards how you protect the information could change, as a consumer, what is protecting you? Right. And how is the brand communicating that to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and a different lens to think about. So as I mentioned, leadership does change, but process and all those other elements that they institute will always remain. And so those things don't change, is what I would say. And so that's how organizations continue to thrive, right? We had different CEOs, you can have a different CMO, but a lot of that foundation work still resides. Even in my old company, a lot of the work that I did actually still exists. I placed an order and I see some of the tech there, and I'm like, I built that and I know it's good. And so that's for me internally, but I agree. I think there's opportunities from a customer perspective. And I think Matt kind of alluded to some interesting opportunities that as organizations we can rethink. And so don't have the right answer to say that we've solved that, but it's something to think about and consider on transparency and customer transparency. And I agree with you. Look, being on the data side of it in a corporation and then being a customer, I'm reading through everything, right? When I buy that Aritzia pants, I'm looking at the reviews, looking if people are talking about sizes and height to say, okay, yeah, that's going to fit me, versus just seeing a model that's 5'9" and 120 pounds. I'm like, yeah, that's not me. Do you know what I mean? And so it's all about credibility. And so there's a lot of, customers are now being a lot more upfront and open, and that you can find that information. But I do think there's an opportunity as organizations on how we can make more transparency with our customers related to data, related to our practices, that could drive better relationships from a business to a customer perspective.
I think just because we are all in this space, we know what a good customer experience is. And so I would just say, as you're navigating and you're experiencing a lot of these brands, just feel like, are they crossing a creepy line because they know a little too much from me and maybe they're using my data in a way that, I didn't intend? Or do they look like they're completely out to lunch and for whatever reason, you're still getting retargeted for a purchase you made 2 weeks ago? And so I think that alone, just how you're experiencing the brand, can educate you enough on kind of their literacy and how well they're using your data. And then ultimately you can determine whether or not you trust that or not. And obviously you're going to see proficiency across different brands too. And frankly, a lot of the ones that are in the news for data misuse, those are probably telling you something than a lot of the other kind of brands that we've mentioned or are up here are a lot more, kind of ethical and using your data in a better way, giving you more choice as a customer.
Well, thank you very much to the speakers and for all the people here as contributors and listeners. And obviously, we learned a lot of different angles when it comes to data pipelines. And given that it is framed as new oil, we're learning what it means to be responsible with it, to be ethical with it, and also trust being at the root of it, whether that's with yourself and your leadership, with your teams, how to build trust and credibility so that data-driven businesses can be effective, but also trust with consumers. And so there's different tactics that have been shared here in terms of how to build that trust, transparency, and create options and choice. So thank you very, very much. And the next portion is networking. You have until 10:30 a.m., correct? Okay, so enjoy your time here.
Thank you.